What is up, guys? Kevin from the KO Sports Corner. Today we have a special guest, Brandon Tobin. He has the Tobin and Leroy show Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m. And then you have Tobin's fight show 7 on 790 The Ticket. And you could also follow him on his YouTube channel, which is entitled Tobin. He posts his Miami Heat press conferences, Miami Dolphins press conferences. And as well, he posts the show. Tobin, how are you, man? Thank you for being here, man.
I'm good, man. I got cracked down by the NFL. I didn't know this was a rule, but you're not allowed to put full press conferences apparently on YouTube for the NFL. So the cops came at me on that one. I had old Roger Goodell knocking at my door, but I could put clips, but I can't put the whole thing anymore. So it'll be like that. But yeah, that's basically the content that I got going on there.
Yeah, man. Today we're going to talk about, the disappointing Miami Dolphins season. And we're going to start off with the Dolphins, but as well, we're talking about the Heat today, which they haven't disappointed at all. Kyle Lowry's been pretty good for the team. I mean, you just noticed some kind of a different dynamic there with that Miami Heat team.
Definitely a different dynamic. It's been said plenty of times, but I think Kyle Lowry definitely opened a lot of Heat fans' eyes as to what kind of playmaker he is, what type of energy he brings to this team. I think you don't probably think of Toronto as being the team with a lot of firepower, pushing the pace a lot, but that is exactly what he's brought. I mean, he's really revved up the engine of this Heat team, almost to like there's like almost like a football team quality to him. Like we all waiting for this high flying offense for the Miami Dolphins. That's exactly what it feels like watching the Heat right now. It's like a track meet. Everybody is got to have their head on a swivel because you never know when the pass is going to come. They've been calling it the Kyle Chaos, but it's really empowered Bam. It's really empowered Jimmy to do the same thing. These guys are looking for alley-oops. It's probably, in a lot of ways, the most fun offense we've seen from just that kind of standpoint, probably since LeBron and Dwayne were together in their primes, because they were kind of the initiators of that. Of you never knew when they were going to throw one of those crazy alley-oops. You never knew if they could go full court pass and things like that. So it's been a really, really fun start to the year. And there's also with them, which I think was very important and lost last year, not only just that they were run down from the bubble, but this was a team that really, really got along the year that they went to the finals. Like just being in that locker room, you could just feel the vibes were very, very strong with that team. And though they don't have many of those characters back, they still have the mainstays of Duncan, Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler. And you're seeing all of that kind of, and of course UD, and then you're seeing all that kind of rub off on everybody else. Like they're just enjoying being around each other again. Things are just a lot more normal. And I think that's going a long way.
Yeah, and not just that, but the defense. It's been incredible. They locked down Brooklyn. I mean, a team that has one of the best offenses in the league with Kevin Durant, James Harden. Bruce Brown had himself a good game. You have Blake Griffin, Paul Millsap. All very good players, and they didn't even have Kyrie. I mean, you look at that. Miami's defense is a lockdown defense. They brought in PJ Tucker, who was a big part of that. Dwayne Dedmon has been doing a good job at it. Bam putting up incredible numbers when guarding Kevin Durant. So I think that's something else to note there.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Those and I think that you look at the three-headed monster on this team with Bam, Jimmy, and Kyle. Like they all bring that to the table. None of these guys are going to be guys that are ever going to lack on their defense. Jimmy and Bam are some of the best perimeter defenders in the league. You look at what they had at point guard and Goran, and Kyle's just such an upgrade. Like he's not fearful of going up against bigger guys because he has such a strong lower base. But you add PJ to it, the rebounding has just skyrocketed. They really do look like they went from a finesse team to a team that just really is going to be a pain in the ass to play. And then you think about their young guys and Tyler and Bam still kind of scratching the surface on what they can be offensively and what they can really give them on a boost night to night. That, Jimmy and Kyle don't have to. Kyle really hasn't had a good scoring game yet, but it doesn't really matter. Like he's not here to do that. He's kind of just to put everything in place. So that's been great. And I think, when you hear what Pat Riley at the end of last year wanted, I think that he clearly is still a guy that would love to have the traditional big, but this team is built a lot more in the way that he likes, because if Bam is going to be your center, all right, then the guy next to him has to be just as much of a pain in the butt to play him. It's got to be a Markieff Morris. It's got to be a PJ Tucker. And then Dwayne Dedmon's had, I think, been off to a fantastic start as well.
Yeah, and talking about that bench, also Markieff Morris. I mean, he went off against Orlando. I think he had 16 points, if I'm correct. A
Yeah.
quick fight with Mo Wagner there too. So it's a kennel of dogs. I think Bam said it best. These guys are just out there to fight, and it's just good to see. I mean, what have you liked? What are those positives that you would give, and I guess some negatives as well on that Miami Heat season? I don't think there are too many negatives.
Yeah, there's not too many negatives to go with right now. I would say I have one concern that I'll get to in a second, but as far as what I've loved from the bench, man, I tell you what, the whole kennel thing, like that's kind of a UD thing passed down to Bam, and it really
Yeah,
does characterize it. But I love the fact that PJ Tucker came out in that Milwaukee game. He was so angry. He hated the fact that Milwaukee kind of just dismissed him as a piece of the championship. So he has an element of disrespect. And that was one of the things with the finals team. They all had this element of disrespect. They were all looking to show something. Now he's got that. Markieff Morris is a guy, he feels that same way as well. Wasn't used the right way. And Mo Wagner, whatever, however you say his name, getting into it with him a little bit. You see Dwayne Dedman getting nasty going on the floor. They're getting into it. Like, those guys bringing that edge. I mean, it's tremendous, because any one of those guys who gets fired up, that has a trickle down effect. The kind of in and outs that all these guys have to go in with game and give out, that gets you fired up on Monday against the Magic, and I think can carry through. So that's been really, really great to see. My only real concern so far with the Heat has been Duncan Robinson, and it's not really so much that Duncan's not shooting, that Duncan's not making the shots, the clip that he does. But I think one of the things that has been noticeable is that Duncan and Bam Adebayo had such a great chemistry for these last 2 years, that those guys were symbiotic. They worked together. And a lot of that had to do with, Bam setting him up with these dribble handoffs, these screens, and those guys aren't working with each other as much because Bam doesn't have the ball in his hands to play make as much. And so I think Duncan is getting used to playing with Kyle. I think out of everybody who's looking to get used to this whole Kyle chaos thing, Duncan, very clear to me when I watch these games, looked like he is the one who is adjusting to it the most. And I don't think it's a character of them not wanting to give him the ball, but you could see him going down even on some games, and he doesn't have head up. He's not looking. And so he's still trying to find, I think, that comfort zone. I think he'll find it. I mean, because he's talked about, he's a guy who I think works through these things a little bit. There's plenty of time for that stuff to work out in the season, but it has been noticeable that he is not taking, as many shots yet. He, maybe goes through quarters where he's not playing as much, or quarters where he's not shooting. And then you'll see him try and be very conscious of that and take a lot of shots in the third quarter. So for me, he's the guy right now where they give him a lot of money. I know he's a guy who kind of wears his emotions on his sleeve and thinks a lot of these things out. He's a very psychological guy. He's a very savvy guy. So I have confidence that he can work this stuff out. But that to me so far has been the one element that hasn't been seamless. Is Duncan Robinson's always has been a focal point of the Heat offense, has been a huge part of what made them go. And right now he feels like a guy who's still trying to fit in, and they haven't quite found it yet.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. He hasn't been taking that many shots like he did last season or the season prior when they made the finals. So hopefully that gets adjusted, and he'll get adjusted into the Kyle Lowry chaos, as you mentioned it. And I think we're gonna get into the Miami Dolphins talk, because there isn't much Heat talk, just how the season just started. So what are your thoughts on this season so far? I mean, it's been very disappointing, I would say.
Man, disappointing is putting it lightly. It's been a disaster. This was, I felt just genuinely from the buzz of the fans, right? I've been doing sports radio for a while, and most of the time that all of the time that I have been doing this job, the Dolphins have not been very good. They've had some okay years that have surprised, but this was a year that felt a little bit different. This was a year that was supposed to be year 3, the rebuild. You have the quarterback you want. You put all the receivers around him. This was supposed to be the year where everything kind of jumped off, and they were going to start being a contender. They were going to be the guys going face to face with the Bills and all that type of stuff. And to be mired in this kind of a losing streak, and you've had every nightmare scenario hit between these, this deep receiving core, never playing, between, you know, your draft picks not quite hitting, not having the offensive line figured out at all, Tua Tagovailoa getting his ribs fractured. And then on top of it, you throw a huge quarterback controversy because maybe they were going to trade for Deshaun Watson. You know, Flores came out on Friday and said Tua is going to be our quarterback for the rest of the year. So I guess they're not going to go with him at the trade deadline, because how could you? It'd be irresponsible to do so. So yeah, man, it's been a complete disaster in every which way, which I think is disappointing, because I genuinely felt the buzz from Dolphin fans this year. I think people were really believing in Chris Greer, believing in Brian Flores, that they're going to be different than the Adam Gases, the Joe Philbins, the Tony Speranos, the Bill Parcells, the Jeff Irelands. This is going to be different. And it feels just all too the same. And the thing that is tough about it is it feels like the guy that they're blaming it on, the quarterback, maybe has the least to do with it out of everything. But he is the guy who gets the most attention for the team. He's the biggest star on the team. And, you know, I think that's kind of come with the territory, but it's almost getting to, you know, just, you really just almost feel for Tua and what he's going through this year because of everything that he's taken with their struggles.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue has been defense and that offensive line. I mean, Tua's the least of the worries out of everything. I mean, obviously he's made some bad picks, but I mean, besides that, he's been pretty good. They're good in the red zone with Tua. They've been pretty successful there too. This season, he has 835 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 47.5 QBR. And last season, he had 11 touchdowns. So he's almost where he was last season when it comes to touchdowns. Passing yards, he had like 2,000, I'm pretty sure. So you look at it, Tua's not been the issue. He's been injured, obviously. And the last 2 games, the Atlanta and the Jacksonville one, you really can't blame it on the offense either. It's blame it on the defense for putting them in that position to make those 2 game-winning field goals, and then a little bit of luck in that Jacksonville game with the curved field goal from the kicker. So in the offensive line, it's been atrocious. Austin Jackson, I think, is the one I want to call out the most here. He's had the most penalties out of that offensive line, if I'm correct. I mean,
yeah,
every 2 plays, you just get a penalty, and that's either holding on Austin Jackson, something on Austin Jackson. It's just annoying at this point. So, you know, the Miami Dolphins seem to be trying to build this offensive line. They're and through the second round, they're drafting these guys who seem like they're going to be good players, but it just doesn't seem to click for them.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think that we got a little bit too. If I'm taking stock of what went good last year and what we probably bought into a little bit too much, is one, the defense had a historic year with turnovers.
Yeah.
You know, Xavier Howard was incredible. And it's not to say that's all luck. I genuinely do believe Xavier Howard has an incredible ability to turn over the football. He really does.
Yeah.
But you can't always rely on it. And just the team's ability to complement and take care of those moments and make him worth something. Like you saw, like Xavier got the pickoff, Tua turned it right back over, or they would do that and not necessarily convert it into touchdowns. You can't botch gifts like that. The other thing, and you mentioned it, is just the lack of discipline this year, I think, has been sorely disappointing, because I do think that people bought into the idea that Brian Flores seemed like he was able to coach his team and players into being a lot more disciplined than other coaches in the league did. And that really hasn't translated at all this year. They've been undisciplined. They haven't taken advantage of good opportunities. And so we're looking for these little victories. And I agree. Tua has looked good in these last couple of games. And I think that that's all encouraging, because in a lot of ways, he's still a prospect. Like you're still trying to see what's good in him, and he's going to have his ups and downs. It's just that everything with him is overanalyzed. But also, man, what a place that we are, that you are having to rely on these last-ditch efforts to beat the Jaguars, who are the laughingstock of the league, the Falcons, who they're kind of in their first year of a rebuild too, with everything. Even though they have a veteran quarterback, they have a new coach and a new regime and a lot of new playmakers, you know, getting rid of icons like Julio Jones. And so you look around, you look at this year, it's like, man, how do they swing and miss on everybody? And I think the other thing that's been tough is it feels like every position of need that they really addressed, that they had an opportunity to fix a hole or do something with, because it's a tremendous job by Chris Greer to go and get these picks and set themselves up the way it is. But the idea that, man, you took a quarterback, there may have been another one better the next pick. You took a wide receiver at 6 because you got too cute, even though you had the number 3 pick, and you set yourself up. In a couple of years, you got 2 first-round picks, but you really could have had Kyle Pitts, who beat you with that crazy play.
Yeah.
You see what Jamar Chase is doing. You would have been in a position to take him if you wanted to. You see what Jalen Phillips, he's only got 15 snaps last week. Okay, maybe he's a little bit banged up, but Greg Rousseau is terrorizing the league. So you see all of these guys who are like parallels and better options, and you're just like, you just have very little faith that his talent evaluation is spot on. Maybe his process is good. Maybe Chris Greer has the knowledge to set things up to and how to trade for assets and all that. But his eye to pick the absolute right guy seems like it's been botched pretty badly.
Yeah, and that's actually, I would agree with that. I mean, Miami had the 3rd pick. They could have gone Kyle Pitts, and they could have used him as a receiver because he has that size to go tight end or receiver. And Miami, I guess, is running a 2 tight end system at some times when they're in snaps. It's just tough to see this happen for the team. You know, just for Herbert having some kind of an MVP year, you would say, at some point, because he's leading that Chargers team. Like, many people did not expect them to be that good, but they've been really good. And at the end of the day, the defense, there's not much you could do about it. I mean, Van Ginkel can't tackle. Like, all of these guys, you just see the struggle in them. And I guess the biggest story about this whole season has been Deshaun Watson. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think the Dolphins should make a deal for Watson?
I don't think that you can make a deal for Watson, and it seems like they're not going to do it at the deadline. There's a couple things that I just wish they would have done. I'll answer the Watson thing in a second. I just wish that they would have nuked the whole talk, because it feels like there's one thing that I haven't liked about Brian Flores when it comes to answering these things. Like, he never wants to say, as a guy who sits through all of his press conferences, he just never wants to say anything. And I think sometimes as the coach, it calls for just saying what it is so he can move on. Remember, Joe Philbin famously did this with Ryan Tannehill, where he was not going to name Ryan Tannehill the starter, and he was going to have Tannehill be the starter the whole time, but he just always said that I want competition, I want evaluation, but it causes a controversy. And it feels like with this Watson thing, I think they probably knew for a while they weren't going to go deal for him, because it's irresponsible to go deal for the guy if you don't know he can play. And when you hear all the stuff that's coming out, well, Houston still wants 3 first-round picks. Well, Houston still wants this. Okay, so let's go over this. So Houston's not budging on the price, but Deshaun Watson still has a no-trade clause. So there's got to be some way that I'm not saying the Dolphins can fleece Houston for only giving up a first-round pick for Deshaun Watson, but we have an agreement here. Deshaun Watson probably wants to be on the Miami Dolphins, and the Dolphins seem like they would be willing, if they knew he could play football, to give up the haul it would take to get Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
So why can't we just wait until the answers are fixed? This season's over. There's no point. There's no point in dealing for him. He's not turning around this roster. They got to completely fix some things. There's going to be a complete overhaul if he's going to be here. And so the idea of trading for him this year was lunacy to me. I didn't understand it. I thought all the rumors were complete bull crap. Not that the Dolphins weren't interested. I buy that. But the idea that, oh, there's other teams that are going to jump in here, it's not just Miami. That just, come on, dude. So all of a sudden the Carolina Panthers are going to say, yeah, now we're in, because why? Why would they be in? Why would all these teams jump in if all of a sudden, do people have answers that we don't know? And you know, Stephen Ross doesn't seem like he has the answers that no. The league has come out this week and say they don't have the answers. They don't know whether they would put him on the commissioner's list. They don't even know if they would put him on the commissioner's list, let alone suspend him. So it just didn't make sense to me this year at all. With him, it's tough because you have this whole web and drama around him with the sexual assault allegations, because we don't, you know, the timeline is interesting where he apparently knew that these things were going to come out before his trade demand, but the trade demand became public before the allegations did. And the lawyer has maybe a weird vendetta with the owner. Was this a, you know, so it had some pieces of, well, is this a smear campaign against Deshaun Watson? But then you see the pieces that are coming out and some of the reporting that Sports Illustrated, and it's like, nah, seems like Deshaun Watson's kind of a creep in some ways. Now, there's been some bad people who continue to play football, But there is a difference, I think, in the idea that he is the head of your organization. That the quarterback has a different distinction than anybody else does on the team. It's not a running back. It's not a wide receiver. It's not a defensive end. This guy has to face the media. Every quarterback speaks every single week. He has a day to talk. He is going to be on all the posters, be on all the media guides. And so, yeah, I do think that there's an element of the Dolphins that has to digest. Do we want this guy to be the face of our franchise? But it's also a franchise that's starved for winning. And will people forget about that if he ultimately goes and balls out? My guess would be probably. They probably would. But you got to have that stuff figured out. I mean, look, if it was just talking about this, I talked about this on my show before the Tua and the Burrow draft, because he was doing, eyeball googly emoji tweets. And I was like, this guy seems like he's unhappy in Houston. I would trade 4 first-round picks. People called me an idiot for this, that you would trade 4 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson. That's Deshaun Watson with a squeaky clean resume, and, there's something about it with me where I'm like, here's what I would say. As good as he is and as tremendous as he is, I wouldn't have him as the head of my franchise. There's a couple reasons. One, still like to see what happens with Tua. I'd like to see what this development goes. The other thing is, it's going to be a lot of quarterbacks that are available. Russell Wilson, reportedly unhappy. Aaron Rodgers, reportedly unhappy. If you're willing to give up these kind of a haul for Deshaun Watson, you want to give up a haul for these guys? You want to do it for 5 years of Aaron Rodgers? You want to do it for, 7-8 years of Russell Wilson? I would. Russell Wilson's been one of the most durable quarterbacks up until this year, with a freak finger injury that he's had. And if you're willing to unload the war chest for a guy who has this sketchy of a past, his big element there, the big plus would be, his age. But these guys are more decorated than he is, and they'd be available. So I just think that, if I were the Dolphins, I'm washing my hands of it and moving on. It's going to be another element for us, though, that we're going to have to talk about for sure if they do end up doing it, because I definitely think it's still a possibility. And how we're going to treat that as fans and followers of the team is going to be a weird balance for sure.
Yeah. Deshaun Watson, I mean, if you had him without the resume, without the allegations, you 100% do this. I mean, the guy is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, one playing, one healthy.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been done already. Like, think about that. Yeah. Like, if there were no allegations, he would have been traded already. He probably would be a Miami Dolphin already if there was no dirt. But there is. It's an impossible thing not to make part of the equation, because the only reason Deshaun Watson is still, getting paychecks from the Houston Texans is because of this, is because he has all of this stuff around him.
Yeah. And you talk about Rodgers and Wilson. You could do this also, because Miami has the draft capital to make these trades. They have the young quarterback in Tua to make the trades. And Houston supposedly isn't interested in Tua at all. So that's why then I think the Washington football team came into play at some point. And it's just craziness. And supposedly they even have a trade agreed on, but Stephen Ross wants the allegations to be cleared up on. And that's just I think if the allegations were already cleared, they would have made a trade. But it seems like it's not going to happen on November 2nd. Me personally, I wouldn't want Watson on the Dolphins because of the allegations. But if it was a squeaky clean resume, as you said, he would have already been on the team, and I wouldn't mind it at all, because this is technically an upgrade over Tua. I do want to see what Tua does for the Dolphins, though, because this guy just seems like the ceiling is high, man. And he's going to be a good quarterback for this team. He seems like he knows what he's doing, although he makes a little bit bad decisions every once in a while. That's just rookie mistakes. The guy will make those mistakes, and he'll have to learn from them. Little by little, he's going to develop into a better quarterback, and he has all the receivers for him. They just get injured. Will Fuller, they signed to a 1-year deal this year. Very good receiver. Devontae Parker, he had a good 2019 with Fitzpatrick. You also have, who's the other guy? Albert Wilson comes back. You have Lynn Bowden, who still hasn't played. I mean, there's just so many guys. And Jalen Waddle, who was his former Alabama teammate. I mean, they've been hitting it pretty well. Mike Gesicki, who's one of the best tight ends in the league, who deserves to get extended, by the way.
Right.
He's just one of those guys and that Tua has really been relying on. And, man, don't trade Tua. Just let him sit on another year. He still has time. This is a rebuilding team. Even though there's a lot of hype around it. I mean.
And the other thing, too, is don't forget about this. Like, man, it would be it doesn't sound like they're going to do it, because the coach came out and said he's going to be our guy for the rest of the year. But man, it would be dumb. Like you would like see if you are going to move on to somebody else, this regime just doesn't believe in Tua, or maybe Tua tells them to go bleep themselves. I don't know. If he continues to have these good games or does put up good numbers, yeah, somebody will buy into him. I don't buy that whole idea of, oh, Houston doesn't want him, or we believe in Davis Mills with him. This is classic of, we know the Dolphins are up against it, and we know that they're rats off a ship on their guy. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it out in the media. Oh, nobody wants him. Get the hell out of here. Nobody wants him. With the quarterbacks you see and start around the league and what he's doing, he's the fourth most efficient quarterback in the league. You're telling me that there's not a handful of teams that wouldn't kill to give up high draft capital for him. I don't buy that at all. I think that's just, stuff you put out in reports to make it seem like the Dolphins are hard up against. This stuff's all a game, man. Like it's one of these things where just because something is put on Bleacher Report or it's tweeted out doesn't mean it doesn't have some agenda behind it. And so when I see stuff like that, oh, we wouldn't be interested in Tua. Oh, really? You're the Carolina Pit? You want to be interested in Tua Tagovailoa? You're going to go with the Sam Darnold thing again? Oh, if you're the New Orleans Saints and you thought this was all going to work out with Jameis Winston, you want to go get the lefty Drew Brees? You have Geno Smith starting for the Seattle Seahawks right now, and Russell Wilson's not going to be there next year. Oh, you wouldn't want to go with a guy with the pedigree of Tua? And another thing that's been impressive about the guy is, I remember, I don't remember, it was something to the effect of somebody said, oh, Ryan Tannehill would show way more toughness than Tua would. Get the hell out of here. Ryan Tannehill had 7 years here. All right. The dude was 7 years, never had competition to deal with, never had a Fitzpatrick situation to deal with, never had, the only thing, the little kerfuffle he had to deal with was Joe Philbin being a weirdo at a time and Bullygate. But Tua Tagovailoa, if you don't think that this guy has shown the mental toughness of a franchise quarterback, I think to me you're crazy, because this dude has had nothing but the franchise kick dirt in his face basically since he's gotten here. Seems like he played last year half healthy. Had the whole Ryan Fitzpatrick thing where people are fawning over this guy. Oh my God, Ryan Fitzpatrick's the best. Ryan Fitzpatrick this, Ryan Fitzpatrick is a journeyman, and we're treating him like he's something special. And the guy you should be treating like something special is the guy you drafted number 5 overall. It was very weird to me.
Yeah, and that too. You drafted him 5 overall. You invested a top 5 pick in him.
Yes.
When you could have done it in any other player. You did it for Tua. So build around the guy you invested a really high draft pick on and make it work, because at the end of the day, it would be pretty much wasting a draft pick if you traded the guy or the guy doesn't turn out to be what you wanted it to be. So yeah. That's what more ended on my end with the Tua thing, because you invested a top 5 pick in the guy, make it work, because the Miami Dolphins really I don't really know what else to say. Tua's a top 5 pick, make it work, because that's all I'll keep it at. And Dolphins are 1-6, 6-game losing streak technically. Tua's 1-3, Jacoby Brissett is 0-3. What can the Dolphins do to turn this around? I don't think there's much to do, but I guess when you assess needs, what would they have to do to turn it around?
I think I just want to see mostly from this is I want to see a defense that's maybe a little bit more, risk oriented than they have been. But mostly, man, I think I do agree on some levels with Flo that they just got to put a whole game together. We've definitely seen a team that has these highs and lows, and it's almost like watching a roller coaster throughout a Dolphins game. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing there. I don't think there's turning around this season. I just don't think that they've shown the elements to prove that. There has been some good stuff. I do think the offensive line has looked better. Even though Tua has had to be pretty elusive, we saw better stuff from the run game this year. We haven't seen him sacked in a couple weeks, so he maybe has a better pulse on the timing of stuff. But yeah, unfortunately, it does feel like it all just starts and ends with the quarterback and seeing what the evaluation is for him personally, because the evaluation of the team, I mean, I don't know. It feels like out of the pieces you for sure keep, I think, as you said, I agree. Mike Gesicki has proven himself. He's durable. He's a great character guy. He backs his quarterback. Some of the way the players have handled these media sessions have been way more impressive than the coach has. And you can't even give a grade to Chris Greer because he hasn't found a microphone in forever. But Mike Gesicki, I think, has definitely proven himself worthy of keeping around. think it'd be silly to let him go or make him disgruntled. I think he's been tremendous. I think Jalen Waddle, I'm not completely sold on what his evaluation is yet because we still haven't seen that great huge burst of him. But I do think that has partially to do with how they're using him. He's shown himself to be pretty damn reliable with his hands outside of a couple shaky punt returns. But I do think that those are the pieces you got to look at. I think that you're hoping Jalen Phillips shows some more flashes. I think Javon Holland's been an absolute monster. I mean, he's been great to see. I think he got completely screwed out of that fumble last week. I don't know what the hell happened there where they're like, oh, you need that time. Like, he was too awesome. He got there too quick to break up a play. And so it wasn't a fumble. It was ridiculous to me. So, yeah, man, I think at this point it's more of picking who are the guys are you going to keep around to be part of this thing. Devontae Parker, I'm done with this story with him, man. Like, the guy's always hurt. He's not reliable. Like you said, he had one flash of the year with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but you were talking about a team with nothing to lose, a quarterback with nothing to lose, throwing up a bunch of bombs to Devontae Parker. Look, we know he's great at that. He's tremendous at going and getting the 50-50 balls. He's a very physical receiver. Unfortunately, he's just not physically durable. Like, you can't rely on him for 16 games. Obviously, the whole Will Fuller thing seems like a completely botched experiment because he's never coming back. Who knows when the hell he's going to play football? So, they got to just identify who are their guys. Like, who are the guys they are going to keep around? Who are the guys they are going to build around? I think that's kind of the important thing. When you lose 6 in a row and you're in this kind of turmoil, that's the stuff I look for in a season is who are the guys that flash? Who are the guys that will mean something to this team when they're actually good?
Yeah. At this point in the season, I don't even know who's going to say because obviously I would say Tua, but without the trade speculation going around, I have no idea. The only ones I could really say are Holland, Waddle, and Jalen Phillips pretty much, and that would be about it. I mean, I guess Xavier Howard and Byron Jones because of those massive contracts they're on, but that's pretty much about it. But when you look into assessing needs, they need a running back. They need another running back.
Oh, yeah.
And I only look at one guy because you passed up on Najee Harris. You could have had him. Marlon Mack, the guy that they've been wanting to get rid of him from the Colts for a while. I don't know what the price would be. I would assume maybe a 3rd or a 4th round pick would make some kind of sense for Marlon Mack, but that would make sense just because I think they just lost. They did sign Duke Johnson, but I don't know how much of an effect that'll do. He's on the practice squad.
I agree. And I think Myles Gaskin's a talented guy. It kind of reminds me a lot of the Kenyon Drake situation where I don't know if I want Kenyon Drake to be my guy. I like having Myles Gaskin on the team. I think he definitely shows himself, but he's clearly just not, an every down back that you trust to do that stuff. He's too small. But he's got some skills. Like, you definitely see some explosion there and you see some great ability, but I would have him as a compliment guy. I wouldn't have him as the feature guy. They went into this saying, hey, we look at the numbers. If we would have had a full season, blah, blah, blah. No, you got to have a guy who you legitimately can trust carry the load, especially for a guy like Tua, where that run pass is such a big thing for him. And I think they just clearly look so much better when they balance it out for him too. So that was a big whiff by them too. But and this is the thing that I think that's frustrating as fans, because we always get told like, oh, they know, they're the experts. And then you think the things that are just so simple. It's like, well, we all saw the running back thing being an issue. Why are we surprised by this? Why are we talking about this on week 8? Hey, they need to go get a running back. Yeah, they've needed that the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I guess Gaskins is a better complement when it comes to pass catching running backs because that's what he's been best at this season. And you also have Salvin Ahmed, by the way, who's had a pretty okay season. I mean, he had a pretty good one last year with the Dolphins as he came up from nowhere, just came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden,
yeah. And you know what's funny about that too is with like Ahmed. Remember they would do that damn deep route with him. They were doing it like crazy in training camp, and they did it a couple times in the preseason. Man, we never see any creativeness like that with this team this year. It's been frustrating that they don't feel like they're uncorking anything. And I think with a season that is like it is, like, all right, let's open up the playbook a little bit. Let's not go at this so conservatively. That would be nice to see the rest of the way too. Just a team that is playing a little bit like it has nothing to lose, because they really don't.
Yeah, and that's where I guess I wanted to go with that one too, because the play calling has been a little bit sketchy this year, especially on that 4th and 1 where all they're doing are hard counts. They're not going for it as much as they used to last season, especially, I guess, at the start of the season, they really went for it on fourth down, but they just stopped all of a sudden, and all they're doing were hard counts with Jacoby Brissett, and it just didn't work. It didn't seem to work. They did it a couple times, and it just hasn't worked. I don't know if you've noticed that too, but I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Whole play calling thing's been weird. We don't know who calls the plays. They won't say it. Again, another weird controversy they make themselves. Flo won't say who's calling the plays. So you know what that does? That leads to speculation of Trent Dilfer saying Charlie Fry's calling the plays. And that leads to speculation of Bill Belichick and John Gruden telling reporters who's calling the plays. And these are just things that I get football secrecy. I get that nobody wants to give up anything. The Patriots cheating for years. Like, everybody's paranoid. Hell, Flo came from that organization that was cheating and a coach that says nothing. But all of this stuff just seems like I sit there week after week and I listen to these questions. And I'm just like, so dumb. Like, why wouldn't you just say, like, do you really think that you're not going to beat the Falcons because they know Godsey's calling the plays instead of Stootsville, or Charlie Fry's calling the plays instead of, like, you think this stuff, like, do you really think it matters that much? Or do you just like effing around with people and you just don't, or are you just that stubborn that you don't want to bend to it? So that to me has been first and foremost the weird thing with the whole two offense coordinators. And I would get into arguments with my co-host about this, Leroy, and he's like, well, they're just doing it because they want to keep both guys on board. I'm like, well, first of all, who's knocking down the door for Godsey and Stootsville? So I don't know what do you mean they got to keep them both on board. And second of all, you gotta have some distinction here. Like, these guys want to know what's what. They want to know what they're calling. Unless you have a situation like you did with Gase, or you do with other coaches where they are calling the plays, and you have a binder keeper like Joe Philbin was in Green Bay. Put some distinction on this. Tell us what's what. And to have all of these things fly around again, maybe it doesn't matter that much, but it makes it seem out on the surface like you guys are a clown show and you don't know what's going on, and you don't know who's calling the plays. So very weird, man. The plays, though, yeah, as far as the way they're calling it, I do think that we have seen they've made this known very much this year, where they're like, whoa, we're taking what the defense gives us. They're not a very risk-oriented offense. I did think up until they were down 2 scores, Tua was playing a very, very conservative game, which was definitely something to note. Like, hey, dude, if you can cut it loose like that when you have to, go. Let's get to it. Let's start attacking some teams. The same thing happened with Jacoby Brissett too, where Jacoby Brissett was taking like hours and hours to throw a 5-yard pass, and then all of a sudden, once it came down to the end of the game, he's heaving balls down the field. It's like, why aren't we doing this a little bit earlier? Why aren't we taking some shots? Why is it until it's absolute desperation time? Why aren't you imposing your will a little bit? Why is this whole, these are the questions that you come away asking yourself. And I think they're all warranted because they're in a 6-game losing streak. I mean, they're arguably the worst team in football statistically. So I think all of that stuff has to be reevaluated. And I hope that we see more shots taken and more risks taken, because I'll tell you one thing, if they have any chance in hell of beating the Bills, you better get some damn respect early. Don't think you're going to do this thing where you're going to go to Buffalo and you're going to go trade field goals or whatnot, or you're going to play this close to the vest game and you're going to go win 9-6. No, you need to go get, it's a lot like fighting, dude. You need to go get respect early on and give them something to think about. It just feels like, they always have these scripted piecemeal drives early on. And then it's like, okay, we're good with that. We're going to go even more conservative the next time around.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, because they always pretty much score always on the first drive.
Yep.
And then after that, it's until the fourth quarter, the third quarter, where they really get it going again and they start to score. That's really what it seems like. And we talked about coaching. I mean, Brian Flores, do you think he's someone who should be considered on the hot seat or even fired at some point?
I think it's impossible not to be on the hot seat just because of where the expectations were. But I don't think Brian Flores is a bad coach. I don't put him I don't think that he is a bad coach. I do think that he has had a little trouble with handling being the head of an organization this year with all of this stuff. I think that he could have been a little bit more firm and out front. And we see the guy on the sidelines. He's a very fired up guy. He's a very impassioned guy when he's on the field. It's the exact opposite you hear on a microphone. Like, the guy addresses the media. It's so calculated, almost to a fault. It's been said that he's not approachable. He's not a guy who's like the easiest to talk to in the world. So I do think that he's certainly had some learning on the job to do, and that you see all the coaching hires that he's made, hires and fires. Seems like he has a guy that he likes or a guy who relates to him and gets rid of him after a year. So I think that he still has some developing to do, but I think we've seen some good things with him. I think we've seen some creative things on the defensive side of the football, and we have seen him be in situations where, hey, this guy's got nothing. What's he going to do? Hey, should I go with Josh Rosen? No, I'm going to go with Ryan Fitzpatrick and go win as many games as possible. So I think he's got some admirable stuff to him as a coach, but he's also just not a finished product. I think he's got a 5-year contract, I think is what he originally signed. So he's got a year left after next season. I think I would like to see him see it out, but the interesting thing will be to determine that is, all right, let's see how Tua ends the season. If some of the rumors are true that they don't have the greatest marriage in the world, or they don't have the best chemistry in the world, usually the franchise quarterback wins out. So it's probably going to depend on how Tua ends the year. If he does look like a prospect of the future, at some point, I think ownership is going to talk to Tua's agent and say, what do you want? Who do you want as head coach? What do you want to do here? I think that'll have a big determining factor. If Tua's mediocre, then the idea is probably going to be, hey, we're going to bring in Deshaun Watson. He was the problem the whole time, or Russell Wilson, or some veteran quarterback. And I do think that Flo's going to say, well, me was the quarterback. Let's go with something new. So I do think that there's a chance that could be a little bit of a power struggle there.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, everything I guess ties down to Tua, because it's just all on Tua. If he ends the season off scorching hot, just has a good season, gets the Dolphins at least 3 or 4 more wins, hopefully. And there's an issue with Brian Flores. They'll probably fire Flores, and yeah, that's what you said. They'll look for a new guy, and there are obviously a lot of guys out there. MIAMI being, I guess, the most popular one, from the Kansas City offensive coordinator, who has been in so many head coaching talks and just never gotten the jobs. That would be, I guess, the most popular choice for many because of what he's done with Patrick Mahomes, or you could even go with Brian Dable, the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, who would also be a good option, what he's done with Josh Allen. So there's just a lot on that end, and I think this is where we're going to end it, Brandon. Thank you once again for coming on. It was an honor to have you.
Dude, thanks for having me. Sorry I was late, and okay. We'll do it again sometime down the road.
Yeah, guys, once again, like and subscribe to the channel. Also follow us on Apple Podcasts. Follow Brandon and everything that on his YouTube channel. Listen to him on 940 or 790 The Ticket, and the Tobin and Leroy show, which is Monday through Friday, 6 to 10 a.m. Once again, see you guys on the next one, and peace out.